going, everybody? Welcome into the Skyline Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jack Hartman, joined, as always, by my good friend and my co-host on the West Coast, Nick Normand. Nick, how you doing today?
Doing well today, Jack. It is on the precipice, as we said last week. Baseball season just started last week. Enjoying the kind of new ABS system. Is that what it is? With
Yeah.
the balls coming straight down the middle and the umpires just calling a lot of funky stuff. But I've seen a couple of good calls by the umpires that now, because we have that it's like, man, it missed by this much and they called it a ball. Good job, umpires. You get some brownie points there. So I like the just clarity and just kind of holding people accountable. But I like that us as the fans get to appreciate they do a good job with some stuff, and when they do a bad job, we can correct it. I think that's awesome. And the NFL has been doing a lot of that, where there were a number of rule changes at the owners' meetings, and they were discussed, and there's some new stuff this year. And I'm looking forward to if that kind of changes the strategy or how things go on the field. But we're not talking about that today. How are you doing, Jack? What's going on with you?
Yeah, doing well. It is Holy Week. So today, as we're recording this, is Good Friday. And so just really taking time to recognize what that means to me. And but it's been a good week, and excited for the holiday ahead. But yeah, we are inching ever closer to the NFL draft. And so today we are talking about mostly post-free agency draft needs for the teams in the NFC East and the NFC North. And so let's just get right into it. We're going to start with the NFC East and the Dallas Cowboys. Nick, what are your, biggest needs for the Dallas Cowboys? And also, I should probably have said this before going there, but some of the needs that we talk about are going to be like, you better address this day 1, day 2. There are others that it's like hey, that's a day 3 thing. You already got these sort of things. It would be nice, to go and get that, and we'll make sure to specify that, as we go. But having said that, Nick, what are your initial thoughts for the Dallas Cowboys?
As somebody who watched the Dallas Cowboys a number of times this year, I watched them because they were a fun team. They were an explosive team. They were a down the field passing team. Their offense was incredible. But you know what wasn't incredible? Their defense at all. Their defense was dreadful. It was awful. It made Russell Wilson on the Giants look good. He threw for like 450 or 500 yards. It was something crazy up there that Russell Wilson just torched him for. The first month or 2 of the season, their defense was just getting lit up. They trade for Quinnen Williams. That shores up the defensive line. But they still have needs on their defense. First thing I would say is not their defensive line, but it's in their front 7. That will be linebacker. They do have DeMarvion Overshown, but he's been insanely unhealthy for the first part of his career. He's torn up both of his knees. He's, I believe, torn an Achilles as well. He's just been very injury prone. He was really, really, really good when he was able to play. But outside of him, their linebackers are completely unproven, completely young. Really not particularly good. Their linebackers, I think, are their number 1 need, because outside of him, they just have nobody good, and he is a flight risk. So that means you have safeties playing linebacker kind of thing, as we've talked about before. And you don't want that when the NFL is kind of cycling back to being more of a running league, as we've seen the last couple of years. Linebacker will be their top need. Cornerback, I think, is another big need. They've drafted there a couple of times the last couple of years, but they've also had major injury and contract issues with their corners, where Trayvon Diggs, really good player, turned the ball over a ton against other teams, had a bunch of interceptions, was a bit of a gambler as a cornerback for sure. But he messes up his knee, comes back, never the same, has issues, was cut last year. I think traded technically to the Packers for like a 7th. It was something like that. But finally, and then you have Deron Bland, who similar type of thing, turns the ball over a bunch of pick sixes, had foot injuries, had surgery, had more foot injuries and issues, had another surgery. It feels like he could be going down a similar path as Trayvon Diggs. And I think that opens up the door for you really need to start investing in who's going to be around for the long haul at cornerback right now. Corner, I think, is another big need. Edge, of course, with Micah Parsons out the door, I think that's the final need for them. They did trade for Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary is a good player, but he is a run-stopping player, and he is a complementary-ish kind of pass rusher. You kind of want him to be your early down run-stopping end, and then third down, maybe on occasion, he'll rush the passer. But right now, he's their lead. He's a starting DN for them, along with the kid out of Boston College last year, who's quite
Donovan
good. Ezeraku, who's a good player, but he's still very young, had solid production last year. And I think really having another edge rusher in this room, that they need their defensive line shored up even more than it already is. They need to be able to rush the passer. I think edge is their last need. All defense, all big needs for this team that was so good on offense but so bad on defense.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add to that other than some statistics that really shore up that point. If you look at their Pro Football Focus grades on defense, they have 4 corners that qualified for, had enough snaps to qualify for ranking. Deron Bland was 44 out of 112. Kobe Durant was 43 out of 112. Reddy Stewart, 99 out of 112. And Shavon Revel, their rookie, 112 out of 112. Ooh. So, yeah, they need help at corner, and they need it bad. If you look at safety for them, Jalen Thompson, 34 of 91, but then you have Malik Hooker, 64 of 91, and Marquise Bell, 87 of 91. Again, not good. You mentioned linebacker. They only have one linebacker that had enough snaps to qualify for, and that's Shamar James, and he was 84 of 88. Outside of Kenyon Williams, Kenny Clark was okay, 37 of 127. So I feel pretty good about their defensive interior. But you mentioned edge. Donovan Ezeraku was their best at 36 of 119, but he's a true pass rusher. His run grade wasn't bad, but he's the type of guy that you want to have to be able to rotate in for pass rushing situations, not necessarily an every down edge. As opposed, the flip side, Rashawn Gary, who you want to have more as a run-stopping edge. The other guys that you have that qualify, James Houston, 49 of 119, and Sam Williams, 93 of 119. So, Quinnen Williams is 2 of 127 for defensive interior. Outside of that, you have nobody. that grades high enough that they would be a number one on an NFL team, right? The highest you've got Jalen Thompson at 34 at safety. So it's all of your picks need to be related to the defense. On the flip side, you look at their offense and you see some really, really high quality numbers. Dak Prescott was great. George Pickens was great. CeeDee Lamb was good. Javonte Williams worked really well for them, which I'm happy for him. I really liked him coming out of North Carolina. It was a shame that he just was hurt so much when he was with Denver. At tight end, they've got some good guys there. They probably won't address offensive line on day one or day two because they've addressed it there so often. That said, though, the guys that they've got haven't been great. Tyler Booker was good. Tyler Smith was good. Tyler Guyton, not good. So I would venture to take a tackle if you're Dallas. But again, I don't think you have enough day two picks to warrant doing that within the first 3 rounds. When you have so many of these needs on the defense, I can't argue with you. Everything you said, I second. Just wanted to really put it into perspective how truly terrible it was.
For sure. Throwing some numbers out there. Yeah. I wanted them just for how incredibly funny it would have been. Free agency if they would have been in on Tyler Linderbaum at center. Because I want Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Tyler Linderbaum, and Tyler Booker. And then you just got to find a fifth. And
Yep.
finding a fifth isn't too hard when you got four of them already.
Yeah.
But Tyler Linderbaum obviously signed a massive deal that Dallas could not afford.
Yeah.
But an all-Tyler offensive line would be hysterical. Anyway, moving on
Yeah.
to Washington. Washington, I wanted to bring up next because Dallas, we obviously just crucified their defense, being like they are awful, they are bad, they just had a terrible defense last year. I would debate that Washington has probably the worst defensive personnel as far as top end of anybody in the league. If I were to ask you who their best defensive player was, I don't know who you would say, and I wouldn't blame you. Like, I just think that this defense has a lot of, okay, off the scrap heap, okay, you overpaid them, but like, I guess they can play a little, but like, you paid them like a stud, and they're like decent to good, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
As far as defensive playmakers, dudes that impact the game on defense, I think this Washington team is awful.
Yeah.
So I'll just put it out there for you on this defense. Like, who do you think are their best defensive players? Like, I don't know. Defense is going to be what I'm going to be focusing on talking about this. But
Yeah.
if you
Well, just in general with Washington, they have been the last couple of years, and they've got a little bit better at it this year. They've been great at signing guys 5 years past their prime, is what it's felt like. Like that's been their bread and butter. Is hey, 5 years ago this guy was an all-pro. Let's sign him. And granted, again, they've gotten a little better at that. But even still, like you look at their offense, you look at running back. Running back, I think that they'd certainly square in the Jeremiah Love sweepstakes if he falls there and they don't take him. I think it would just be malpractice by them. You look at running back. Okay, they signed Rashad White. Like okay, like he's older. It's fine, but not good. And the other running backs they have on their roster right now, you have Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, Jerome Ford, and Jeremy McNichols. All of those guys rated. All of those guys have played enough snaps to be graded by Pro Football Focus, and they were all the best. Was McCroskey Merritt at 38 out of 59. Then you have Ford at 58 and McNichols at 48 out of 59. Like just not good. Laramie Tunsil is probably the best guy on their roster, but again, he's ancient. Like for an offensive tackle, he's really old. Outside of him, of course, you've got Jaden Daniels, who certainly regressed last year. It's sort of who's to say like if that was just true sophomore slump and he'll bounce back, or like if I hope it's not a CJ Stroud type arc. Also, I still have stock in CJ Stroud. I'm buying stock in CJ Stroud right now because it's so low, and I think he'll turn it around and it'll pay off really well. But Jaden Daniels, hopefully we're not seeing a similar arc there about what year 3 looks like under him, with him at quarterback. Looking further, Terry McLaurin is great, but he is the center of wide receiver diva drama every year. So who knows how long that they have him without things getting better. But you go and you look at this defense, and the best the best that they've got on defense at linebacker, Leo Chenal, graded 19th out of 88 at linebacker. And Tim Settle on the defensive line, 25 out of 127. And right behind him, Odafe Owe, 26 out of 119 at edge. But I'm seeing a lot of guys that are like, there were 120 or 115 guys that were eligible to be ranked, and you're in the 100s. So, there's just, you look at their corners and you've got names that make you think, oh, that's pretty good, but you actually look at the breakdown and it's not. Like Mikey Sainristil, 95th out of 112. Trey Amos, 80th out of 112. Amik Robertson, who I love, but 107th out of 112. Like, woof. You look at the rest of their corners. Trey Hawkins, Carlin Vigors, Akello Witherspoon, Darius Rush, and none of those guys got on the field this last year. So, I mean, to me, I'm looking at corner as their biggest position of need, bar none. You look at their safeties aren't very good either. Their whole secondary is just bad. On top of that, their defensive line isn't very good. Javon Kinlaw did not pan out. Jerjon Newton, not very good. Again, Tim Settle is the only guy who had a rather a passing grade on the defensive interior this year. And again, linebacker also bad. It's very similar to Dallas, just in very different ways. And that it's okay, you've got one, maybe two, defensive linemen that you're okay about, and then everything else is just yikes, either it didn't work or it just never worked. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I am there with you. The funny thing is that I think their defense is just super untalented, but some of their biggest needs aren't even on their defense. That's the shocking thing. You look at their wide receivers. Terry McLaurin's been a staple there, of course, for a number of years. He got banged up last year, was less effective. Then you're depending on Treylon Burks, who washed out of Tennessee as a wide receiver. You've got to be really bad for Tennessee to not keep you around, man, because they are starving for wide receivers. Luke McCaffrey, who's been decent, solid blocker, tunnel screens. De'Ami Brown, I think he was here and then gone and then came back.
Yeah.
He can be a decent role player. Jalen Lane, decent role player. But who outside of Terry McLaurin scares you as a wide receiver? The answer is no one, and that's terrifying. Running backs, like you said, if you need a running back 3, Washington's got you. But you don't want running back 3s. You don't want role player, soak up a couple of snaps here and there, be a third down receiving back. You want quality running backs, and they don't really have that. And so for a team that it's man, they made the playoffs, they made the NFC Championship 2 years ago. It's just so clear to me how heavy the burden was on Jaden Daniels and how heavy it is still on him. Where it's man, it's Terry McLaurin, it's Jaden Daniels. We're depending on Chig Okonkwo. We're saying Laramie Tunsil, get out and block on the screens. That's your offensive plan, it feels like. So I would just say, man, the defense overall, you need a defensive playmaker, somebody to impact it. And on the defense, the defense playmaker, offense, wide receiver, running back would be the biggest needs for me.
Yeah, I also look at this offensive line and it's not good. They're at guard, horrendous. Chris Ball and Andrew Wiley are their only guards on the roster that received grades, and we've got 69 out of 79 and 74 out of 79. It's really, really bad on the interior of that offensive line. Problem is though, they don't have many draft picks. They've got round 1 pick 7, and then they don't have a draft pick until round 3 pick 71. So you need to make that first pick count, because you won't have another one until late Friday night. And then from there, it's a 5th round, 2 6th rounds, and a 7th round pick. Those are the only picks that they control as of right now in the NFL draft. And that said, necessarily the type of draft that I want to give up a lot of capital that I have the following year to go get a pick in this year. So I'm not entirely sure what you do if you're Washington. You have all these needs, you're not going to be able to fill them. And if Jeremiah Love is there at 7, I think you take him. And if not, maybe you try to trade back and get a later first round pick and some second round picks, maybe, or some third round picks in this year's draft, to help you. because like I'm thinking of like Caleb Lomu out of Utah. I think that would be a really good offensive lineman for them to draft, a guy who has potential, but who knows where he ends up. Just a guy that could help, but there's no way he's going to be available at pick 71. So what do you do there?
Hmm.
Washington. I feel like Washington right now is sort of how we viewed New Orleans like 3 years ago. You've got old guys who working, and you don't have much. You don't have much money to spend in free agency, and you don't really have picks that are going to get you much, and so you're just kind of stuck. Um, to me, it makes it even more impressive. They were able to make the NFC Championship game two seasons ago, because wow, do you look at it and feel like the cupboard is bare?
Hmm. Yep, I get you. I think this is a true BPA team. Like outside of quarterback and maybe defensive tackle. Like I think this is a true like you just got to take the best dudes and build up this roster basically from scratch. Even though you were way ahead of schedule 2 years ago, I think that I think that you just got to feel like you're building from the ground up. Like you just drafted a quarterback in the first round and you're building up around him. Like that's how you got to feel with this team. They're just not that good, man. Moving on, the Giants. Couple of thoughts I had. One, wide receiver outside of Malik Neighbors is awful. I do like Darius Slayton, but he is a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, just like somebody who can play, but you don't want him to be your wide receiver 2. I think that interior offensive line, of course, is a place that they can upgrade all across the board. They obviously have had good left tackle play when he's healthy, and I'm blanking on his name, but that's okay. Right tackle, they brought back Jermaine Illuminor. He's been solid for them. They have him still on a reasonable deal. He's still decent age. The whole interior offensive line, though, I think you can upgrade. Aaron Stinney, you can upgrade. John Michael Schmidt, he's been underwhelming. John Runyon, you can upgrade. I think just taking a best deep offensive line interior spot would be good. And I think defensive tackle, even though Sexy Dexy's a stud, he's really good. I think if you can make this defensive front go from a feared pass rushing defensive line that's terrifying to a we can stop the run, hold you down, get you in third and long, and then rush the passer, that's going to set up this team to be a really good defense and a really good team. And right now they can't stop the run, and they don't have a defensive tackle outside of Roy Robertson Harris to pair with Sexy Dexy. And I just think that if you can get a nose tackle or somebody to go with Dexter Lawrence to be able to say, 1st and 10, you're running the ball in the A gap, you're not going anywhere, like we're pushing you back, you're going to put yourself in really good positions and be able to maximize this defensive line that you've invested in a lot on the edges.
Yeah, I agree with you. I look at safety on this team. Two off or the last off season they signed Javon Holland. It was kind of underwhelming, and you also think about John Harbaugh being there now, and everyone thinks about the defenses under John Harbaugh, and they think about Ray Lewis. I think about always having an elite safety. Kyle Hamilton, Ed Reed. So I think that they're square in the Caleb Downs sweepstakes at pick number 5. Um, I agree with you with the defensive line. Pretty underwhelming. I think about linebacker as pretty underwhelming. But that said, wide receiver outside of Malik Neighbors, like I think there are some guys that it's like, hey, this could work. Like it could work. Maybe it was just coaching staff, but I think this could work. But like I don't know. I don't see a guarantee that it works. Um, I think Jalen Hyatt could work as a down the field threat, but it hasn't so far. So, do we think that the new regime is the one that's going to unlock it? I don't know. I don't really know about that. Um, I know that some people have talked about, oh, maybe they get Jeremiah Love at 5. I don't think that would be the wisest choice in the world because, despite Cam Scatterbo missing a few marbles, he's he was successful for them at running back. And they do have Tyrone Tracy also and Devin Singletary, guys with experience. Um, but yeah, I look at guard, I look at safety, and I look at wide receiver. I also look at corner. They don't have a corner that scares me. Like they're kind of like their top corner is Greg Newsome. It's not it's not great. Um, so I would say those four really are the top ones to me, but definitely getting Jackson Dart, another wide receiver to throw to. Definitely protecting the interior of the offensive line. Obviously tackle is the sexy offensive line position, but you look at every quarterback that has ever been successful in the NFL. When have they not been successful? When they've got pressure right up the gut. It's almost this. It's almost this weird thing how we so highly value tackle and edge because of pass protection, when in reality, like you have a strong uh, you have a strong defensive tackle that can get up in a dude's grill. That makes things the most difficult. And when you have a weak offensive line in the interior that can protect up the middle, that's also what makes things most difficult for the quarterback. Kind of interesting how we value the outside so much when the pocket gets closed because of the guys pressing forward. That's when things are actually the hardest for a lot of the best quarterbacks. Um, so they
Mhm.
on their interior on the defense and on the offense needs to get better, and they need someone outside of Malik Neighbors to lighten the load, and especially because Neighbors is coming off a torn ACL.
Mhm. For sure. For sure. Moving on to Philadelphia, our last team in the NFC East. They've obviously drafted very well. They're a really good team year in, year out. They make the playoffs basically every year. I look at this roster, and there are a few spots that I think you could really improve at. First, I think edge. Nolan Smith, I really liked coming out of Georgia. He was a really polished player who could do a little bit of everything really well. But opposite him, you have Jalix Hunt, you have Joe Tryon Shoyinka. You have Arnold Ebiketie as well. Like, it's just Nolan Smith and a rotation of dudes. And Nolan Smith has had some injuries, some inconsistency. I just feel like you want some bigger, stronger, more proven edge rushers in there, especially this as a team that likes to rotate their defensive line between their tackles and edges. Like, I just think they could use another edge rusher there. Safety, I think there's a spot opposite Andrew Makuba that could be important if you want to add somebody there. Cooper DeJean is obviously going to be a DB that can soak up a bunch of those snaps anyway, just because you're always going to keep him on the field in early and late downs. Besides that, I just think that Philly's really a team that's drafting for the future in some ways, where like Lane Johnson's been a rock on this offensive line. This should be his last year. This or the next year at the latest. Like, he's old, man, and he's still good, but I think you need to start drafting for an heir for him. AJ Brown's been good and consistent for them. Debate who you want to put the blame on. But I think for when AJ Brown's gone, like, you want to have another wide receiver. Maybe you don't need a wide receiver one like AJ Brown. Maybe you don't need to draft him in the first. But I think if you're drafting a wide receiver in the second or the third, that could be really valuable for a Philly team that might be getting ready for life without a Lane Johnson or an AJ Brown.
Yeah, I agree with you about Philly. I think when it comes to wide receiver, and I know I've said this for so many weeks in a row, but this is such a deep wide receiver draft. Um, and I see a world where you take a wide receiver in the second or the third round that could be a wide receiver one day. Um, especially if you get the guy that fits the archetype of big body, deep ball threat, which you can certainly get there on day two. Because, I think what we see with Devontae Smith is I think he's going to be a great wide receiver, but he has to be a wide receiver too. That's just the route tree that he has, serves him better that way. And because he's so much smaller, having, a second, the second best corner on the opposite side of him is somebody that he can torch every day. But I don't know about corner one. So I agree with you there. Yeah, I agree with you with the offensive line looking to the future. Lane Johnson, yeah, he's getting up there in age. I think they could improve on the interior. Like Cam Jurgens is good. I think they could have better than that. But that said, this is only year 2 post Jason Kelsey. You kind of want to give him a little bit more time to try and grow into that. And anyone who coming out after Jason Kelsey was going to be a downgrade. Like that was just the reality. Unless you're getting, like prime Nick Mangold, may he rest in peace. Like that wasn't gonna live up to that. I agree with you on edge as well, and safety. Andrew Makuba is kind of your top guy at safety, and he wasn't phenomenal last year. I would argue that Philadelphia has the best corner room in the league right now. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Keely Ringo. They decided to go and sign Tariq Woolen. I think we've seen Philadelphia do a phenomenal job getting guys to play secondary that are honestly not very good and have diva issues and making it work. I mean, look at how much success they had with CJ Gardner-Johnson, who every time he's gone anywhere else has just been bad and a locker room cancer, really. Like that's kind of how it feels. So I think they'll make it work with Tariq Woolen actually really well. And so that like their corner room to me is really, really good. But yeah, safety has issues. Edge, you want to get somebody opposite Nolan Smith probably to make his life a little bit easier. And I think if you're Philadelphia, the best thing to do with AJ Brown is trade him on draft night when you're going to get the most value for him, and just end it, because like it's just not like this is. I feel like this is 2 years now that we've just had AJ Brown issues all season. 2 years ago, it felt like, oh, things aren't actually that bad because they were good and they went on to win the Super Bowl. But in reality, every week it felt like we were talking about AJ Brown, like he's reading books on the sideline and stuff like that. Like just kind of some wild antics there. So, I also understand that the most value money wise, if you get rid of him, is to wait until June 1st. So like there's that balance there. But again, if you trade him on draft night, you'll get picks for him that you can use, that night. So that's what I would do if I'm Philadelphia. And yeah, let's just cut the cord with this, because it's not. How likely is it that you're going to get a fully bought in, actually playing AJ Brown next season? I think the answer is you won't. I think if he doesn't get traded on draft night, then he'll hold out until you trade him. And then when you trade him, you're getting stuff that won't be valuable for you for this next season. And sure, if you're a team that, didn't make the playoffs, maybe you're competing for the division this year, but who knows? That's fine. But Philadelphia is still in their competitive window right now. And so I think you gotta make that call. But that's just me.
For sure. Moving on to the NFC North, starting with the Packers. I look at this team, their offense has talent. Their offensive line, they've invested in a good bit. Anthony Belton in the second, Jordan Morgan in the first. I feel like they're able to manufacture at least solid offensive line play, so I wouldn't be as worried about that, even though it doesn't look like it's the best offensive line. I just think that they're able to kind of tape that. Their wide receiver room, deep bunch of players who I really like a bunch of these players. Christian Watson, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Bo Melton, Savion Williams. Like, they just have a bunch of dudes who I think can be contributors. So I don't really feel a need there either. Tucker Kraft coming off an injury, I think he can bounce back. Luke Musgrave, I think he can play at least decently. Josh Wiley as well. Looking at the defense, this is where I feel like they kind of want their bread and butter to be. Because I think on the offense, Jordan Love, if he can take a step forward again, that the offense can just be much better. The defense, I just think that there's such a burden on a couple of players here, and they kind of need to just upgrade straight away to be able to kind of have the influx of talent, be able to float them a little bit. Corner, I think, is the number one need. They obviously, Jair Alexander's long gone. What was his name? I'm blanking on the dude who went to the Raiders and re-signed with them, who played well for them last year. He's obviously gone as well. But they really have a need at corner. I think that Keyshawn Nixon, he can be solid. Carrington Valentine, he can be solid. Ben St. Juste, he can be solid. But you don't have good corners. You have solid at best corners. And that's how the Rams lost to the Seahawks multiple times last year, because they didn't have corners that they could trust. I think that this is a defense losing their coordinator, who you're going to need to influx some talent to be able to kind of raise the floor there. Looking at the rest of this defense, Micah Parsons coming off a torn up knee. I think that edge to be able to take some pressure off of him. Right now it's Micah Parsons, Lucas Van Ness, who's been disappointing, and nobody. And at defensive tackle, it's Javon Hargrave, Devontae Wyatt, and nobody. So I think that being able to kind of expand the defensive line rotation is how you're going to get much better with this defense outside of corner. That will be my 3 spots, though.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I want to make the argument for wide receiver for this team. And here's why I want to make the argument for wide receiver for this team. I look at their wide receiver room, and I see a lot of wide receiver 2s. I don't see a guy that's like, this is the guy that terrifies me on the opposite side. It was supposed to be Christian Watson, but he can't catch the football very well, and he always gets hurt. Matthew Golden, I think, was disappointing to them last year. Now, who knows? Maybe he could step up and step into that. You mentioned Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. Last year they also had Romeo Doubs. Like, those guys are good, but again, they're not the guys that are taking the top off the defense. And so I think if you're Green Bay and you see a wide receiver that you really like, that is like can take the top off the defense type guy that is there on day 2, I think you do it. I think you give Jordan Love a true down the field threat. I feel like last year in the games that I saw Green Bay play, their best down the field threat was Tucker Kraft. And most consistent for sure. And so, I'd love to see what this offense could look like if you got, that big body, fast, will beat the guy down the field type receiver who can do, the stuff over the middle as well, obviously, and has a wide route tree, but can be I will beat you down the field type receiver, and get Jordan Love that and see, because Jordan Love has a really pretty deep ball, and so get someone that with more consistency you can do that. That said, I definitely agree with everything that you said about, the defensive positions that they need to address as well. I don't think that wide receiver is a top 3 need, but I don't think it's something that they shouldn't address at all.
I'm just going to put it out there. I hard disagree with you and think that's kind of insane to say wide receiver. Like, by no stretch. Like, they are 6+ deep at wide receiver. They just drafted a wide receiver in the first round last year in Golden. If they drafted another receiver in the first round, even the second, like, I think that would be nuts. Like, I
didn't say to do it in the first or second round.
I just mean, though, like, I think it would be nuts because, like, if you have depth and you have good players, like, I don't get why you drafted at all, to be honest. Like, let me put it this way. It's been health to me more than anything, where Christian Watson, health concerns. Matthew Golden, a little bit banged up last year. Jaden Reed, very banged up last year. Romeo Doubs, banged up last year. Like, to me, it was literally just their wide receivers all got injured. Tucker Kraft tore up his knee. Like, every single receiver got banged up at some point or another. Like, to me, it's not talent. It's not how good. Like, this is a deep, good wide receiver core. They just, like, got torn up by injuries last year, in my opinion. I wouldn't put it up there at all.
I think they are deep, and I think they are talented, and I do think that they got, beat by injuries last year. But I don't see the wide receiver that is the down the field threat, can run everything and can take the top off of defense. I don't. You argue that Christian Watson is that guy, okay, but he always drops the football. I think you can get better. I think you can get better down the field. I think imagine a wide receiver with the skill set of an AJ Brown on this offense. Imagine how much better of a tool that can be for Jordan Love. And again, I'm not saying that this should be a first, second, or even third round thing that they address, but if you see a wide receiver, I know you loved Savion Williams last year, but he wasn't that guy. They didn't use him in that way, right? But if you find a wide receiver that fits that archetype that you really, really like come day 3, then do it.
I get you. I just think that's kind of disingenuous because you're saying if you just add in AJ Brown, like, of course that would change things. And then you're saying just draft a dude day 3 who like does those things. And it's like AJ Brown at his peak's a top 5 receiver. You're not getting that in day 3. Like,
obviously he's also an all-pro and is experienced. Like, you're not drafting anybody outside of the first round that is going to be, likely that is going to be that. But a guy that can, there's potential there that you see in that. Like, I don't think you're drafting anybody that is going to immediately plug in and fill that role. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is a really deep wide receiver class. And if there's a guy that you see on day 3 that you're like, this guy is toolsy and I think I like him more than I like Savion Williams, then do it. Like, I don't think that's a problem.
Sure, I guess. Like, yes, if you want to draft a wide receiver 6 for your team, like, I think they're that deep. I think they're that good. Sure, if you're drafting on day 3, like, I get it. But, like, you drafted Matthew Golden because you thought he could be your deep threat down the field. You thought he could run all the routes. You thought, like, he could do everything kind of receiver. That's why you draft him in the first round. And he was really good in college. And I think he can be good in the NFL. But, like, I think this is probably a team that, outside of it's a good wide receiver class argument, like, I just don't see why they would draft one at all given the roster. That's just my opinion. But
okay.
Yes. Moving on, Vikings. Wide receiver 3. This is a team that I think really needs wide receiver. They got Jay Jettis. They got Jordan Addison. They got nothing after that. Like, Naylor left, but they have nothing. Hawkinson hasn't been the same since he tore up his knee. And they just completely untalented after Jay Jettis, who's amazing, and Addison, who's good but off the field issues. Defensive tackle, if you look at that position, man, it is disgusting. It's Jalen Redmond and nobody else, and you don't want Jalen Redmond to be an every down player. Like, he's solid. He can be a good role player. But, like, their defensive tackle room is abysmal after they cut Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave and somebody else, I think, as well. Like, their defensive tackle room is bad. I'd also throw out DB. If you just look at their DBs, I'm really kind of disappointed by them. Obviously, Harrison Smith, he's like borderline Hall of Famer. Like, I don't think he's going to make the Hall of Fame, but he was so good for so long for this Minnesota team. He's gone. I believe he officially retired. But Isaiah Rodgers, Byron Murphy, James Pierre, like, these are cornerback 2, cornerback 3. They don't have a cornerback 1. Jay Ward, role-playing DB. Josh Metellus, better, but still, like, kind of a decent, just a guy kind of DB. They got no DBs that, like, I feel good about outside of Byron Murphy. This team needs some DBs. I think that with a bad defensive tackle room and bad DBs, that, like, you're putting a lot on, man, Brian Flores' scheme is really good. And his scheme is really good. But you need some better players if you want it to be a great defense like we've seen it able to be. So,
Yeah, safety in particular. I'm satisfied. I mean, not, it can be better, but like, safety is the real bad spot. Like, if your corners, I don't think are terrible, right? Safety, I feel like with Harrison Smith being gone, safety is terrible. I would say it's as bad as the defensive interior as your defensive tackles. There's a reason that almost every mock draft has the Vikings taking the kid out of Oregon, because he's really good and because they're really, really bad at that position. Wide receiver three, sure. I would look at running back also. Like, Aaron Jones is old. Uh, Jordan Mason is fine, but you're not gonna you're not gonna you're not gonna get Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jameer Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey level production out of Jordan Mason. That said, draft a running back at all because the running back class is awful. So,
Yeah, you're right.
like, I wouldn't do it. There, yeah, tight end. T.J. Hawkinson is not the same as he was. Josh Oliver was fine last year, but if you're looking to get your quarterback, uh, whichever quarterback that is, someone to, people to help him out. Um, their quarterback room is very interesting. Carson Wentz, Kyler Murray, Max Brosmer, and J.J. McCarthy. Like, I genuinely don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback this year, and I don't think it's just a two-horse race between Kyler and JJ. Like, genuinely, like, who knows what Carson does? Also, um, uh, their edges are strong, but I also think that, if this could be a team. Okay, this could be a team that, like, hey, let's take a flyer on Keldrick Falk. Let's see if it works. Like, again, I wouldn't, but this might be a team. Philadelphia, actually, I think would be a really good team to do that. Because they have so many positions that are really good. Um, but yeah, I see it's got to be safety in the first round to me. Maybe that. Me, if Caleb Downs is there, which I'd be surprised, but if he's there, do that. If not him, do Thieneman. If he's not there, the kid out of Toledo. I think all of those have to be. They wouldn't be your top three on Minnesota's draft board, obviously, because there's far more talented players than those three players just ahead of them. But when it gets to you, whichever of the best of those three is available is who you have to take if you're Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. Couldn't agree with you more there. Going on to Chicago, because we want to save your Detroit Lions for last so you can go off with them. But going on to Chicago, defensive line, I just look at edge and defensive tackle where, like, Montez Sweat's good. He had a down year last year. Grady Jarrett has been good, but he's older. Gervon Dexter's been a role player type of defensive tackle, even though you drafted him high. Deo Odeyingbo, like, he's just a guy to me. I think you could upgrade across the board there outside of Montez Sweat. I think that outside of Sweat, like, none of these guys are for long there, and you really need game changers. Just like when you're talking about, like, man, Detroit, they have Aiden Hutchinson, but, like, who else is across from him at the edge? They obviously have better defensive tackle play, and Aiden Hutchinson's better than Montez Sweat. But I just think, like, you need game changers on this defensive line to be able to get the most out of your really good DBs. I think you have really good corners that can make plays on the ball and be a really good lockdown defense if you can get more pressure on the quarterback. Their safeties, of course, I think are also a weakness. Kobe Bryant played really well last year. They signed him. I think he can be really good. But Cam Lewis and your other secondary players at safety, I just think you can improve there a lot. And outside of that, I would just throw out maybe wide receiver 3 as well. Currently it's slotted to be Khalif Raymond. I think he's a really good returner and gadget kind of guy, but I just think you need another okay, you have two tight ends, two receivers, but when you want to not have your two tight ends on the field, let's add another receiver who's playable. Luther Burden can be pretty darn good. Roma Dunze can be pretty darn good. Your tight ends can be really darn good. But Khalif Raymond, I don't know that you want him to be your third receiver. That's just my feeling, though. And in this draft, as you've said, very deep, I think you can get a good player who can be an upgrade from him at that wide receiver 3 spot in the third or fourth round. I think you can get a good guy there. So I'd be going there if I was Detroit.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There's one thing that you didn't say that is very surprising to me, and that's center. So they had Drew Dahlman retire, and they have replaced him with Garrett Bradbury. I mean, you now have a guy to play center who has experience snapping the football, but I mean it's not a great, that's not a great replacement by any means. Um, the tough thing is like because of that, I would love for them to draft a guard who they think can play center. However, they've got such great guards in Joe Tooney and Jonah Jackson. So like if you do that, he's not going to play guard. He's not going to have the opportunity to start as a guard and maybe you move him over there. So if there's a true center or a very versatile offensive lineman who is like literally you draft him and you put him at any spot on the offensive line, I think you do that if you're Chicago. I agree with you with edge for sure, and defensive line. I think first round probably whatever 4 down uh, defender that is at the top of your board that's available. I think you take. I think that makes a ton of sense. Um, yeah, what I would do with Khalif Raymond is one, obviously let him return all the punts and all the kicks, but I would actually see what he could do because there were a lot of times Detroit used him out of the backfield. I would see what you can, how hard it might be to kind of convert him more into a running back than or maybe not necessarily convert him to a running back, but convert him to a out of the backfield guy, not necessarily a wideout guy. Because he's so electric with the football. And you just want to find ways. And I know that I know that Ben Johnson will find ways to get him the football. But yeah, so yeah, maybe wide receiver 3. Yeah, like we talked about, deep wide receiver class. They're yeah they I think they should invest in an offensive lineman that can play center. And can play center well. Again, if that's a guy that is a true center, or if that's a guy that can kind of play all along the line, and then you have him, So maybe Jonah Jackson gets hurt, and you keep Garrett Bradbury at center, but then you get whoever it is that you plug in at the other guard spot. That works too. Yeah, I trust their safeties more than their corners, but I don't really trust their secondary that much at all. Their linebackers aren't. I mean, they're okay. Devin Bush, DeMarco Jackson, and T.J. Edwards. Like, there's hope there, so I don't think I would address it, early. But yeah, I think everything that you said I ditto, but I just feel like we have to mention center as well.
For sure. It's a good shout. I just feel like Garrett Bradbury is a solid holdover. Like for 1 year, I think he can be a 1 year starter. And with the offensive line, like your center, if you have Garrett Bradbury there, like if you draft a center, like he's not getting snaps unless he beats him clean out. Like you're just not switching around linemen like that. Like I think somebody like a safety or a corner, like even if you draft a dude really high and you have a really good secondary already, there are still snaps to be had in the secondary. When you have a starting center and you're drafting a center, like there are no shared snaps there.
Right.
That's just my kind of hesitation with the line. Wrapping up with the Detroit Lions, I'll just give you the floor. Take it, run with it. Let me know what you're thinking about them.
Yeah, the two main things that need to be at the top of Brad Holmes' mind are offensive line and edge, if you ask me. Detroit fans have been asking for it for years now. Get somebody to play opposite Hutch. just to make his life easier. You know, we've seen how incredible he can be and how many sacks he can get when he's the only person that the opposing offense needs to worry about. You get somebody else that can step in there consistently. You know, I mean, they've had some guys here and there that will have like one great season. You know, I think Al-Qadim Muhammad is a great example of that this last year. Um, but they let him go, and I think that was the right call because he had enough sacks to for his agent to ask for lots of money that I don't think he's worth. Um, so I do think that was the right call. But you know, again, there's you got to get somebody on the opposite side of Hutch just to make it possible for him to truly, you know, be the best. Um, if you look at some of these other guys, other edges that have been, you know, had insane years, you look at the rest of the offensive or the rest of the defensive line, and there have been guys there that it's like, you know, okay, you can't put all of your resources to block TJ Watt because you don't want to leave Cam Hayward one on one with an offensive guard, you know? Oh, okay, well, you can't. You know, Cleveland has been really good at getting a secondary pass rusher on the other side. They sort of started with it with Jadeveon Clowney, you know, and then like have done that really well, you know, someone who is above average to make it so you can't just put three guys on Myles Garrett, right? You know, so whoever that is, I think it needs to be that. And then offensive line, like the year that they went to the NFC Championship game, and then the following year that they won 15 games, their offensive line was by far the best in the NFL, the best offensive line in the NFL. And they still have a lot of potential there. I mean, of course, Penei Sewell is like the best right tackle in the league. There's talk of moving him to left tackle. I think if you do that, he'll be really, really good. You know, if not great. Tate Ratledge, who you drafted last year, he was solid. I felt good about him at guard. Center was just a problem. You bring in a couple guys that have experience playing center that, you know, in Juice Scruggs and Cade Mays, you know, we'll see one of them probably Cade Mays there at center. Hopefully, I mean, I do think that would probably be an upgrade, but not necessarily like, oh man, now we've got, you know, it won't be like having, you know, Frank Ragnow. You know, like it just won't be the same there. So there's just spots on the offensive line that need addressed. There's some offensive linemen that I think would be, you know, good that would hopefully be available to them in the first round. I just to draft an insight that I feel like I have is that we're going to see a lot of offensive linemen that are going to fall. And the reason we're going to see it is because you look at the draft order and you look at teams that don't need to address it, right? So, or that do need to address it, but will address something else, right? So, Las Vegas, they're taking Mendoza. The Jets, they've put a first-round pick into offensive tackle the last 2 seasons, and it's worked. Especially Armand Membo was great last year. Then you have Arizona. Okay, that's a team that could draft an offensive lineman, but that's also a team that you look at the offensive lineman, and it's like, you know, I think if you trade back, you could probably still get your, you know, your pick of the litter if your pick is still picking within the top 10 picks. So there's a chance that then, you know, they move back. Okay, who's at 4? Tennessee. They're probably going to address defense with whatever pass rusher is available. You know, I just think that would just be the best pass rusher available. That would be sort of the obvious thing there. You know, if you do this and you move through, like, you know, one of CeCe Maui-Noah, Monroe Freeling, um, Spencer Fano, like one of those, like, you know, top 5 offensive tackles. At least one of them is going to be available when the Lions pick at 17. I think just because, again, you look at the needs of these teams that are ahead of them. And yes, offensive line is a need for all of them, but it's not the need. And I think they're going to be guys that are the need that they're going to take ahead of them. New Orleans, they've invested in the offensive line, you know, in the draft in the last few years, right? So, like, I don't know who it is. My hope is that it is Monroe Freeling, but I think sort of where everyone's at is that he's actually going to might be the first. You know, I see really wide ranges for him. So we'll see about that, but it's got to be edge. It's got to be offensive line. And if you ask me, corner as well. Like DJ Reed was not as productive as he had been with the Jets before last year. Still good enough. Terry and Arnold is just not good. Like he's it was a miss. Let's just call it what it was. It was a miss. We took him in the first round. We wanted Quinyon Mitchell. The Eagles traded up and got him, and so we took Terry and Arnold, and it just hasn't worked. Let's just cut the cord with that. Call it what it is. You look at the rest of this, corner room. Rock Yassin has experience. Okay, Ennis Rakestraw has experience. Khalil Dorsey, Roger McCreary. Like these guys have played, but like it feels a lot like this is the Legion of Whom that we saw when they went 15-2, in the back half of that season because everybody on the defense was getting hurt. Um, so I think that corner, people are talking linebacker. And I think a lot of that is because Alex Anzalone left, but they still have Jack Campbell. Malcolm Rodriguez didn't play at all last year because he was still recovering from a knee injury, or maybe it was his Achilles, but I thought it was his ACL. I think he's good. Jack Campbell is one of the best linebackers in the league, so I'm not as concerned about that as I am at like, okay, we are bleeding in the secondary, especially at corner. It might also be time to think about, do we get another safety? Kirby Joseph keeps getting hurt. He's getting older. I don't know. But the top things have to be the offensive line and edge and corner.
For sure. If I word for word with my notes, I put offensive tackle, edge, cornerback depth. Like you, word for word, you hit it out of the park there, 100%, Jack. When I look at this roster, I also I've watched a good number of Lions games the last couple of years. They've been good. They've been a great offensive line. They've struggled in the secondary. Like that's kind of been their identity, where their offensive line, they run the ball, they're big and strong up there. And then they've gotten injured and torn up in the secondary. And when I look at this team, I just feel like if I'm a Lions fan, if I'm a dude who watches this team, I'm like, I want our strength to stay a strength, and I want our weakness to not be a weakness anymore. And that's what I think you're talking about. You're talking about we've always had this hole opposite Hutch. We need to fill this hole. We've always had issues in the secondary. We've been bleeding the Legion of Whom. It's just been a struggle in the secondary, especially with help. You want to cover up that hole. The offensive line has been a strength. You've been able to pound teams. You've been able to run it 40, 50 times in a game if you want to and be a really productive team. I just think that it's your identity. It's what you need to continue on doing. It's what you need to improve. 100% agree with you. I'd also just slide in there. I don't think this is a big need, but like, why not? I think that backup quarterback, it could be fun to kind of take your like Hooker, who you took out of Tennessee a couple of years ago. That was when we weren't 100% sold on Jared Goff with Hendon Hooker. He obviously didn't work out. He didn't get any snaps. He just like didn't get playing time, and we still don't know what he is. But I just think that taking a developmental quarterback on day 3 could be interesting. It's not a need. You still technically have Teddy Bridgewater on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
I don't call it a need at all, but like I think that it could be a spot that why not invest late there. Quarterbacks are always valuable. Having a mobile quarterback, I think, could be really fun if you had like a Talon Green out of Arkansas and just had him for quarterback sneaks or like 4th down as another option to have to guard the quarterback run. That could be kind of fun. I think that just adding a little wrinkle in the quarterback position, whether it's for the future or whether it's a kind of depth sort of athletic piece, could be fun as well. But you gave a lot of great shouts there for sure, Jack.
Yeah. The one other thing that I would say, and it's easy to say this looking back, but I did say it at the time. I did not think it was the right decision to trade 2/3 to move up to take Isaac TeSlaa last year. Like that. I mean, he's fine. Like he's good. He's a good wide receiver 3. However, with all of the needs that there are this year and with how deep the wide receiver class is this year, I know I keep saying it, but seriously, like I would much rather have not done that, taken something else, and have 2/3 this year to be able to take one of the wide receivers that falls to the 3rd round and something else. that is just not going to be a reality because of trading up for Tesla. Um, just yeah, I mean, again, it's really easy to look back in hindsight and say that didn't pay off, that didn't make sense. But I remember at the time being like, wow, why this? Like that doesn't make much sense to me. Um, Especially because, who knows, like that could have been a piece that you could have used to move up in the first round to, hey, Freeling gets past 10. Like, okay, let's move up with Miami, get to number 11 so we can take him. We really, really like him. That you gave up a piece to get a wide receiver who, again, yeah, is a wide receiver 3 that you could have gotten in this year's draft to pigeonhole yourself so you don't have the war chest to be able to move up to get the offensive tackle that you love in the first round this year. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Mhm. For sure, I agree with you there. I think it was a bizarre move at the time. And the other thing was like Tesla's testing numbers were good, but during the time of that draft, like I didn't hear people clamoring like Tesla is going to be an early third round pick. Like I think you could have just waited and gotten him, and they
That
just
too.
decided to not wait and get him. Like they traded up from 102, one of the last picks of the third round. I think you probably could have gotten him at that pick. Like
Yeah.
I just don't think you needed to do that, and you basically lit 2 third round picks on fire. And like that's insane to me for a front office that has been pretty darn good over the
Yeah.
last half decade.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like when I look at the way Brad Holmes in the front office is drafted for Detroit since taking over, there are a lot of like A pluses and there are a few like D minuses also. Like, and I know you like to say that the Lions, they overdrafted the year that they got Gibbs and Jack Campbell in the first round, and everything. And it's like you can say that, but also, I mean, they're two of the best at their position, in the league. Like it's paid off, right? And
For
it
sure.
now you can
For
look
sure.
at it and be like, oh, that was the right move. That said, Terry and Arnold, like that said, the move to get to Slaw last year, so like, and again, all teams have their hits and misses. You just you wish that the misses weren't as dastardly as it feels like it is, at least as of late. So we'll see what happens this year. I think though, yeah, I think we've got some good needs for these teams moving forward. And yeah, next week we'll venture into the AFC, doing the AFC West and the AFC South. Um, and yeah, let's see. Today is the 3rd, which means we are only 3 weeks away from the NFL draft. So we'll probably do the AFC over the next 2 weeks, and then who knows, maybe one more mock draft before our big draft show. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in and uh, for listening. Let us know if we talked about your team, what you want to see your team do in the first or second round in this year's draft, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good one, everybody.